Okay, this is chapter 2, lesson 1 on how to write equations. And I would like to start with noticing that what we're going to do is translate sentences into equations and translate equations into sentences. And I did want to point out something I noticed. The link in your Canvas to go to the extra practice, you can actually click on it right here from the book, and it'll open these things for you as well. So that's something that you can look at. We've got the study notebook, which is the note-taking guide that I want you to do. And then there's some extra practice, some tutoring, things like that. So those are there available for you that I just recently found. Okay, so we're going to translate words into math. And so let's look at this clue words list that I found. And this is not 100% complete, but this gives us a really good start. For adding, we have sum, gained, increased, more, altogether, plus, total, combined. Perimeter is adding. We can also use an added to. We have multiplying, product of, distribute, twice, double. Answer, this means we're going to actually give an answer. Solve, find, express, evaluate, calculate, model, solution, simplify. Now, solve and solution refer to equations. Find, express, evaluate, calculate, model, and simplify is not when we find x equals some number. It just means that we can take what we're given and we simplify it down. Sometimes that gives us a single number, sometimes it gives us an expression. We have subtracting. So, this is a good list for subtracting. We have dividing. We have equal, and then reversing the order. All right, so let's start with the first example in the book, which is about the Daytona 500. And if we look at, let's go back to the book. Each lap is 2.5 miles, and the total race is 500 miles. And so we can figure out the number of laps if we take the length. That's too big, sorry. Okay, we take the length of the lap times the number of laps will equal the total race distance. We know the length of the lap is 2.5 miles, and we know the total race distance is 500 miles. What we don't know is the number of laps. And so we need to assign that a variable, and in the book they used L. Just be sure if you do use L, don't use L like this because that looks like a 1. Make sure you use a cursive L so that you can tell it's an L and not a 1. And so we'll take the length of the lap times the number of laps to equal 500 miles, and then we can find out from there exactly how many laps you take on the race. Sometimes the equations that we have to translate are more straightforward than this. So let's look at another couple of examples. Example A, 7 times a number squared is 5 times the difference of K and M. That's a terrible M. Okay, now remember in the past, in a previous lesson, I said when you see something that says 5 times the sum or difference, this indicates parentheses are going to occur. 7 times, this is multiplication, a number. Well, we aren't given that number. Let me change my symbol for multiplication. We aren't given that number, so we can give it any letter we want. I'm just going to use n for number. I have 7 times a number squared is 5 times the difference, which is subtraction of k and m. So I can translate this to 7n squared, that's 7 times a number squared, is 5 times the difference of k and m. Now when it says the difference, you go straight in order, k minus m. If it says m less than k, it would also go in this order. But when it says something less than, the thing that's less than comes second. It gets subtracted. Let's look at our next example. Sorry, that's B. 15 times a number subtracted from 80 is 25. Okay, 15 times, that's going to be 15 times a number subtracted from. Now when we see this subtracted from, this right here means that we bring the negative in front. So the number is being subtracted, so it's minus n. And then of course we have 80 is 25. Is means equal. So when we translate this, we get 15 times a number subtracted from 80 equals 25. And I guess I shouldn't have put that subtraction in front. It's 15 times a number, so let's come in and erase that real quickly. Oops, sorry. This whole thing is being subtracted. So it's minus 15n. Now, right now we're not solving these. All we're doing is translating. So we don't want to worry about solving right now. We just want to translate. So we want to turn words into math. It's a very important skill that we need to learn for future work, word problems. I know you hate word problems, but word problems and things like that. Let's do 2 more. 2 plus the quotient of a number and 8 is the same as 16. All right, so is the same as is equal. So if we're the same as, we're equal. 2 plus, so we've got a 2 and a plus. And then we have the quotient of a number and 8. Whatever comes first, when we're talking about quotients, we're talking about division. So it's the first divided by the second. So in this case, it's going to be a number divided by 8. So when we put that together, we get 2 plus a number over 8. The quotient of a number and 8 is 16. And one more. (27) times k is h squared decreased by 9. Okay, so 27 times, that's 27 times k, is h squared, and then decreased by 9 means minus 9. So I have 27k is equal to h squared minus 9. So basically just go through and break it down just like I was doing here, where you write down right underneath or on the problem what the parts mean. That'll really help you to put together the equation. You need to make sure you understand what every word in the sentence is telling you. All right, so let's look at a real world example where we will write an equation and we're going to actually solve it. So this is an air travel, and I'm going to write down some information and it's just going to magically appear. All right, so we are given this information, and if we look at the book, let's go to that page. There's this information right here. They say to refer to the information at the left. I wrote it down up top, so I changed it to above. And it said in 1919, Britain and France offered a flight that carried 2 people at a time. Today, approximately 45,000 flights per day with hundreds of people per flight occur. Now, it says to refer to the information and determine in how many days will 180,000 flights have occurred. In 1919, Britain and France offered a flight that carried 2 people at a time. This is extraneous information. Extraneous information means it's information that we don't need. So we don't care about that, so I'm just going to cross it out. We don't need it. Okay, today we have 45,000 flights per day. We do need this information. So I'm going to write that down. We have 45,000 flights per day. And we want to know how many days to equal 180,000 flights. Per day, 45,000 flights per day. This means we're going to multiply the number of flights times the number of days, and we'll get a total number of flights. So let's write that down. And this is basically our equation setup. If we come in now, 45,000 flights per day, I will call days D. There's 45,000 flights every day, and I want my total flights to equal 180,000. So if I write this out in an algebraic equation, I get 45,000 D equals 180,000. So in order to solve this, sorry, I am losing my voice. In order to solve this, I have multiplication. 45,000 times some number equals 180,000. So to find this missing number, I need to take 180,000 and I need to divide that by 45,000. So 180,000 divided by 45,000 is 4. So my answer is 4 days. So in 4 days, there will be approximately 180,000 flights in the United States. Let's try another one. There are 50 members in the North Carolina Senate. This is 70 fewer than in the House of Representatives. How many members in the House? Okay, so there are 50 members in the North Carolina Senate. This is 70 fewer than in the House of Representatives. 70 fewer than tells me to subtract 70 from the House of Representatives. Now I don't know how many people are in the House of Representatives, so I'm going to call that H. And there are 50. R is a form of the word is, which means it's an equal, so it equals 50. So H minus 70 equals 50. And I just need to determine what number minus 70 equals 50. So I'm going to add 70 to 50. And I see that the number minus 70 that will equal 50 is 120 members in the House. Okay. Now we're not solving this in a very algebraic way right now. We're solving this using logic. We're going to get to the algebraic way to solve equations in the next couple sections. So don't worry about that. We'll get to that. All right. Next thing we want to be able to do is to write formulas based on information given. So translate the sentence into a formula are the directions we're given, and the sentence is the area of a triangle equals the product of 1/2 the length of the base and the height. All right, so we have area of a triangle equals, well, equals, that's pretty obvious. And area we'll call A. The product, that's multiplication. 1/2 the length, so 1/2 L, and, oops, sorry, not L. 1/2 the length of the base, so 1/2 B, so that's all of this part, and the height, H. And since we're a product, those two things are being multiplied together. So area equals 1/2 base times height. What you should remember from earlier work. Let's do another one. Okay. In a right triangle, the square of the measure of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the measures of the legs. Now, you probably know this theorem, the Pythagorean theorem, and when Pythagoras first came up with the theorem, algebra didn't exist. He didn't write it the way we're used to seeing it. It was actually written out in a sentence just like this. And then later, somebody took this sentence and translated it into algebra, which is exactly what we're going to do here. So we have the square of the hypotenuse. So the square of the measure of the hypotenuse, c squared, is equal to the sum, that tells me to add, the squares of the measures of the legs. So I'm going to have a squared plus b squared because of this addition up here. So c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. You're probably more used to seeing it a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And both of those are fine because remember we have that symmetric property that tells us we can flip around the equal sign. Don't forget our properties. Okay. Next, we need to go backwards. So we're going to translate math into words. We've been translating words into math. Now we're going to translate math into words. There are usually more than one right way to do this. So I'm going to maybe list a couple of ways. And just know that for your own work, you only need to give me one correct answer. You don't have to give me all the possible correct answers. So for my first one, I've got 6 times z. So I can just write that out. 6 times z minus 15 is 45. That's the very basic way to write that. I can write this out a little bit more mathematically complicated. The product of 6 and z minus 15 is 45. I could go 15 less than the product of 16 of 6 and z is 45, and there's probably even more. That's just 3 possible ways that you could turn this into a sentence. Again, you only have to give me one correct. You don't have to give me every correct possibility. Let's try another one. Y squared plus 3x equals w. So the square, well, let's start with the very, very basic. Y squared plus 3 times x is w. I just wrote exactly what I see. Y squared plus 3 times x equals w is w. The square of y plus the product of 3 and x equals w. Excuse me, that's another possibility. The square of y increased by we'll go with the product again. Product of 3 and x is the same as w. So you can be as simple or as complicated as you want to be. Again, I'm just getting a couple of examples. There's probably more ways to write this than that. Just make sure you give me a correct way. It doesn't have to be, there's not necessarily the correct way. All right, let's do 2 more of these and then we'll wrap up our notes. Let's see, C. 15 is equal to 25 times u squared plus 2. I could write 15 is the same as the product of 25 and u squared increased by 2, etc. Let's do one. All right, the last one of these. I'll go very straightforward. 3 halves of r, remember of means multiplied, minus t cubed is 132. I could say 3/2 of r decreased by t cubed is 132. I can say t cubed less than 3/2 of r is 132, etc. So there's a couple different correct answers. All right, let's write a problem based on given information. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our own work problem. Okay, so we're given some information. We are given that t is equal to the time Maxine drove. T plus 4 is equal to the time that Tia drove. And 2t plus t plus 4 is equal to 28. So we can write any problem. We know that t is the time Maxine drove. Tia drove t plus 4. And then together twice Maxine's time. So 2t, this is twice Maxine, plus Tia is equal to 28 minutes. Okay, so that's what we've been given. So we can just write any kind of problem with this. Not minutes, sorry, it's hours. Well, at least according to this, it actually doesn't say. So we could call it minutes if we want to, or we can call it hours. It makes more sense actually to call it hours. All right, so let's look at this for a second. We have twice Maxine plus Tia is equal to 28 hours. So I can say that Tia and Maxine went on a trip that took 28 hours. They took turns driving. Tia drove 4 hours longer than Maxine during her turn. Maxine took 2 turns of equal length. How many hours did they each drive? Okay. And you could write something else. Just basically take the information and write a story to go with it. Let's look at another one of these. We have P is equal to Beth's salary. So 0.1 P is equal to a bonus. And P plus 0.1 P is equal to 525. Okay, so it looks like her salary plus her bonus is equal to 525. So Beth normally makes P dollars per week. Since it's Christmas, she was given a 10% bonus this week. Her check was $525. How much is her regular salary, or something like that. Again, you're writing a story. There's going to be a ton of correct answers on this. Just make sure you include all the problem and that your sentences fit the scenario that you're given. And next we'll go on to the note-taking portion. Let's go over what you should have gotten from your note-taking. The things that we are going to learn, I'm just writing things we need to learn, is to translate sentences into equations and to translate equations into sentences. Now, if you went through and you wrote down two things you already knew, I have no way of knowing what you already knew. So if you already knew something, write it down here, and that's perfectly lovely. Okay, we're going to define equation in our own words. Again, there's going to be these are your own words, so your words and my words may not match, but an equation compares two quantities with an equal sign, or something along those lines. We have new vocabulary, which I did not go over when I was recording the lesson, so I apologize for that, but it's a formula, and the definition of formula is a rule that describes the relationship between certain qualities. So I'm going to say between specific quantities. And formulas are set rules. They never change. So if we did the formula for the area of a triangle, that's always the formula for the area of a triangle. There's no other formula for the area of a triangle. There's not different triangles having different formulas. It's always the same. So it's a rule. Okay, let's look up the word formula in the dictionary. I've got my handy dandy Webster's. Formidable, formulate, formula. Okay, a rule or method for doing something. Okay, well, how can that help us to remember the mathematical definition? A formula is a rule for calculating. In English, it's a rule or a method for doing something. In math, it's a rule for calculating. So that's a direct correlation. Right. We've got a model here to help us translate this sentence into an equation. So 6 more than, that's going to be 6 plus or plus 6, either or. A number squared is 5 times a number minus 30. So 6 plus n squared equals 5n minus 30. And this is very similar to the technique I was using in the video where I was writing, kind of underneath it or on top of it. So same idea, and if this, like bubbling it off, helps, then by all means please use this technique, whatever works. All right, translating each equation into a sentence, there are a lot of different correct answers on this. I'm going to go with the most simple translation. 7 times x plus 2 equals 30. And again, there's a lot of different ways. We can make that as complicated or as simple as we want. P squared plus 18 is 7 minus k. Right. And then we have a 4-step solving problem plan that they talk about in the book. And we need to go back actually to chapter 0 to make sure we have those words that they're using. And U is for understand, P is for plan, S is for solve, and C is for check. So understand, plan, solve, and check. And those are your notes for chapter 2, section 1.